Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Trump's moving against the Federal Reserve to make them loan to small businesses and to community banks. Yeah, it's been 9 years since they really loaned any money to the people. Their bailout was a Wall Street robbery event, and Trump's just delivering again. He's so good, it really makes my head spin, quite frankly, versus what they say about him. It's super Americana. It's not right-wing. It's not left-wing. It's, hey, we have borders. Wow, just a moderate of borders, and they freak out. Or, oh, hey, we're not going to, let China have one-sided trade deals with us, and it's the end of the world. Japan's not going to have one-sided trade deals. And now, what is it, $300 billion Japan's announced this year to be built? This year? Was it $100 billion before he even got in office? So amazing things happening. Now, a lot of times I get guests on who I know are respected, who I respect, even though I haven't gone and seen what their view is on something. So many other TV shows and radio shows will call me and they'll say, what's your view on this? We want to make sure what your view is before we have you on. I don't do that. I respect J. Michael Springman because I remember he was one of the first whistleblowers to document back in 2001 and then 2002 what later came out in the FBI reports and in the 28 pages that members of Congress have been on who've read it to expose, that we knew Saudi Arabia was involved. There was a stand-down ordered. Well, Mr. Springman went public first and exposed that because he'd been the head of the visa section there and then had left to another area, and then his colleagues told him what happened. So he wrote the book years later, but he went public. And he's written the book, Visas for Al-Qaeda, CIA Hideouts That Rocked the World. And so General Flynn, 5 years ago, head of Defense Intelligence, who they're trying to kick out right now as National Security Advisor, worked with the rest of the Pentagon to just tell Obama and others, we're not going to back Al-Qaeda and ISIS taking over Syria. And they actually then just basically told Obama, you're going to let us work with the Russians to start kicking them out of the country, or we're going to expose this. President was told that. In fact, we broke that here first with Colonel Schaefer. We've had Cy Hirsch on about it. I mean, this is big, big, big mojo, okay? I mean, I'm not bragging. We know the real history of what's happened. So our government actually has been saying no for 15 years in trying to back Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and now ISIS, all the same group, different names. And Islamic State, which is its own, country in between Iraq and what's Syria. So I'm just giving you some background here. I don't know his view on Trump. I don't know his view on what's happening with the law and the visas and all the rest of it. But I'm going to get Springman's view just in the prism of his life and his experience, what this signifies. Because they're all over the news. They'll even say, look how crazy Trump is trying to stop people from these 7 nations. Then they won't even read the law on air. They just say he's crazy and a liar. And then the Ninth Circuit clearly just ignored reality. Now, Trump can't say for a religion you're barred because that's the First Amendment, and I agree with that. But that's not what he did. So I want to get J. Michael Springman's take on this, his view on this, where this is all going. But I think our country, our military 5 years ago, finally started coming up from the bottom and supporting Al-Qaeda and ISIS all over the world. Our military would fight them on one hand, but then the State Department and CIA would support them on another. And the Arab Spring was really the fruition of this long, ongoing project. And Benghazi and, the stand down there. So that's why I have this lengthy intro to ask our guest his view, his expert view on this, because now it seems like the old elements of the State Department and others are isolated, wanting to still support this, but the State Department's in open rebellion against Rex Tillerson and basically ignoring what he says to do. And so I really think this country has entered a very, very deep crisis. And we need to somehow rectify it. So we'll get his take on that because he's worked for the State Department. He's done it all. And he was the first domino, even before the FBI agents, because they went public later, to come out and really expose the whole thing. He began to pull the first string on the sweater. And now the sweater is a pile of string on the floor. We've been proven right, but it's like, oh, we've moved into the future. Let's just forget that. But the future's now. We're living the context of this, and how deep does this deep state alliance with Saudi Arabian Wahhabist Islam go, a place where he lived for many years there in Saudi Arabia. So long intro, get the book, J. Michael Springman, An Insider's View, Visas for Al-Qaeda, CIA Hideouts That Rocked the World, now more important than ever. Thanks for coming on, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
That was a long kind of 6-minute intro history for listeners. I mean, A, do you agree, disagree? I mean, where do we start here?
Well, it starts in a couple of different places. Going back to the book, it showed how the U.S. government was working with the terrorists, essentially recruiting, training, and supporting them in conjunction with the repressive and rather repulsive allies we've got in the region, like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states and Israel and Turkey. And we kept pumping money and weapons and supplies into these people. And at the same time, we're fighting them, saying, oh, my God, we have these terrorists. They're everywhere. We have to fight them tooth and nail. And Obama gives them ground-to-air missiles. He gives them leftover weapons from the Yugoslav war in Croatia. It's astonishing. And now they're saying, oh, this is terrible. We have to do something about it. Well, what you do about it is simply stop supporting the terrorists. Don't give them weapons. Don't give them money. Don't let them go to Israel for medical treatment after they've been wounded in Syria. It's a simple way of stopping this, but the attention gets focused on the wrong things, I think. Trump started out very well, making statements about one-sided trade deals, making statements about the flood of illegal aliens coming into the United States. But he went off the rails with this ban on visas or people or permanent residents or anybody who has been traveling in any of these countries, no matter what their nationality is, and creating a tremendous uproar in the United States and around the world. And it turns out that these 7 countries essentially were the same ones that were targeted by the United States back in 2001. Wesley Clark, the retired general, was on Democracy Now! In, I guess, maybe March of 2007. And he had said he had been at the Pentagon in 2001 in September and October, and had been told by high officials whom he wouldn't name that the United States was going to move against 7 countries in 5 years and destroy them. And these were the same countries, with the exception of Lebanon and the addition of Yemen, that Donald Trump has banned from entry to the United States. And I think this goes back a long way to the American hostility toward the Arab and Muslim world, moving only into the country when it seems to be to America's advantage. What's happened is we've destroyed Afghanistan, we've destroyed Iraq, we've destroyed Yugoslavia, we've destroyed Libya, we've destroyed Syria, and we're in the process of destroying Yemen with our wonderful Saudi friends. And what's happened is that we have driven hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people into Europe. The country, or the continent, is flooded with people who have been driven out of their homes, out of the countries that we've destabilized, we've dehoused them, and we've deculturized them, blowing up things like the statues in Afghanistan or Tedmur in Syria. And, we've destroyed them. And the people have no homes, they have no country. And with American help, money under the table, assistance from passports that have been produced either by the French or the Qataris, or sold by the Syrian embassy in Berlin, or which have been lost or thrown away or stolen along the way, we've got people without a home moving into Europe, where they have no culture, no language facility, and no education, and the continent is coming apart. And we don't look to see what's happening. We have George Soros and some of these other people who say, oh, yes, we want to help them. We want to set up cell phone charging stations. We want to set up Wi-Fi networks in the Balkans, their main transit route into Europe. And therefore, we have to help these poor people, because just like in the United States with the flood of illegal aliens from American destruction of governments in Latin America, we've overthrown...
Sure, so the globalists, you're crystallizing this also perfectly. The globalist policies through the United States as well ruins these countries. They're falling apart. Then they flood here. Then they're exploited politically for control here. It's just a totally, 360 full spectrum dominant system. But I love how you brought up the key points that Europe lets the jihadis that leave Europe to go fight in Syria come back and get medical treatment. Sweden in places have social worker programs to quote, reincorporate them as if you're going to let an Al-Qaeda or ISIS fighter come back and go to a Swedish, a re-education system, to play with Play-Doh and crap. I mean, this just shows how totally infiltrated we are and how the UN refugee program certifies through the State Department who's allowed to come in. Trump's saying we're not going to do that anymore. So from the info I have, the State Department is in open revolt, ignoring him and Tillerson, letting these people still flood in. So if that's correct, then what happens when there are other Islamic attacks?
Well, that's the thing of it. They've either had real attacks or have had engineered attacks, false flag operations, if you will, I think. In France, for example, in Paris on November 13th, more than a year ago, you had people shot up in restaurants. You had explosions. Where do they get the weapons? Where do they get the explosives? They were smuggled in, as far as I know, from gun runners from the Balkans.
That's right. So let's talk about this when we come back. What is the dialectic as a high-level, fellow in the State Department who oversaw a whole visa section in Saudi Arabia and blew the whistle on it? What is the philosophy of previous administrations? Because Trump is changing it, in my view. Correct me if I'm wrong. To create the radical jihads or fund them, let them in. You don't totally command them, but you let them attack. What is the point? Bring in huge numbers, let them attack, and then I guess take everybody's rights away? We'll be back with a major prime whistleblower. We'll be back. Man, you couldn't have two different people than Pretty Boy, Dumbo, open his country up to jihadis, Trudeau, and Trump together in this meeting that's ongoing right now. Truly sickening. After all the things Trudeau has said about Trump. And again, folks, Trump's not perfect. I love him because he's actually trying to turn the economy on. He has Goldman Sachs totally angry at him for trying to deliver more jobs. I'm going to cover it after our guest leaves us. Visas for Al-Qaeda, J. Michael Springman. And I know you know this stuff, folks, but your friends, your family, they don't. Looking at all this in context then, Mr. Springman, again, I want your honest view, and I know you'll give it to me. You've heard me gushing over Trump. I didn't ask you what your view was before I called you, obviously. I really want to know it. I've had other people that were, in customs and in border enforcement on, and they just talk about the fact they weren't even allowed to say Islamic terror starting about 6-7 years ago. And how do you screen for this if you can't even say Islamic terror? But before we do that, what is the $64 trillion question? What is the math? What is the equation to bring the Islamic radicals in, protect them, give them weapons, let them attack? And then even politically, though, it's hurting France, it's hurting the German socialists. Why are they doing this?
Well, in Germany, for example, they have been concerned about a falling birth rate and not enough money coming in to support their social welfare system. And Chancellor Merkel and some big businessmen have the idea that, we can bring these people in. They will bring new blood in, new outlook, new culture, and they will then have jobs and they will be taxed and they will set the social welfare system back on track. What's happened is that they don't realize that a lot of these people are young single men with no real education. They're people that don't speak German, that don't speak Italian, that don't
who have total disdain. They were taught to hate the culture they've now been plopped in.
Yeah, they're there. And there is no pool of Dari speakers, no pool of Arabic speakers that can help these people. They're just simply brought in and left to themselves. They've been turned into weapons, essentially, weapons of mass migration. And they are the ones really that are suffering. They've engendered this hatred amongst the Europeans themselves. The Europeans are fighting each other from the welcoming culture that wants to give them candy and flowers. And the other people who say, well, my God, look at what's happening. They come in, there's this tremendous crime rate. There was a guy in Vienna who had a sexual attack. So he raped a 10-year-old boy because he couldn't hold back anymore. I mean, this is insane.
Well, that's right. People don't know in some of these poor Islamic cultures, it's all very schizophrenic. They're anti-gay, but then if it's love, it's okay to have sex with a boy, just not a man. I mean, it's like pedophilia is legal, but not being gay. I mean, it's totally backwards. And that's what's crazy is you start mentioning these stories. I could back up the articles, everything you're saying. It's so crazy that they bring in military-age men, and then, I mean, I've seen the videos where they throw old people out of their Section 8 housing for the Muslim young men. I mean, what type of image is that from Italy to Germany, throwing people out of their hotel and saying, take these North African people in, and it's insane.
Well, the thing of it is that they're sparking an increase in nationalism in Europe. There are the right or the farther right-wing parties, from the Front National in France to the Alternative for Germany. They're saying we want to stop this. We want to change things. We want to bring back the old Germany, the old France. And essentially, the government is not listening to the people. The people say, we want protection. We want borders. We don't want sex-segregated swimming pools.
Oh, they're showing up at the beach. Yeah, the Muslims are, and demanding that women not be bikinis. Listen, go back to Islamabad if you don't like seeing women.
Well, in Saudi Arabia, my Arabic teacher said that her son's school said it was terrible for women to wear two-piece bathing suits, and she rarely wore a bikini when she went swimming in the Red Sea.
Wow.
But I mean, the Europeans are absolutely furious, and I think things are going to continue not to improve. They're going to get worse, perhaps.
Well, do 5 more minutes with us on the other side. This is a short segment.
Sure.
Visas for Al-Qaeda, J. Michael Springman, the book available at Amazon.com and everywhere. I want to come back and ask you that as a really smart guy, and I mean that, not condescending, like really smart guy, where you see this going. Where does this lead? Because it's obviously, I mean, it's like, it'd be like parachuting a bunch of, modern multicultural black folks into 1830 Alabama, KKKville or whatever. I guess it wouldn't have found it until later. The point is, you're just mixing all these Islamists in with liberal Europe does not mix. Our guest is leaving us in about 5 minutes, and I'm going to cover tons of news I haven't gotten to yet. We have David Knight coming in the 3rd hour, 4th hour. I may co-host with him some. I've got a lot I want to cover, a lot I want to say. But I need to get off air, too, because I've got to get with a lot of people and write a big investigative report about what's really going on with Reince Priebus. And, again, I didn't get this information from Trump. I get this because all the obviously good people that are around Trump know what's going on, and Trump talks to people that I know as well. Absolutely infiltrated by Republicans who are out to get Trump. So they're owned by the very same big Wall Street interests that want a monopoly. And Trump's breaking that up. I got the Federal Reserve news here I'm going to get to. I mean, you want it, you got it. I mean, it's really amazing what Trump's doing. America's open for business. Now, does that mean billionaires and stuff that do good deals aren't going to make money? No, this is free market. They're going to be rich people. But they're going to produce stuff, and they're going to build industry, and they're going to make this a world based on people. Globalism's the opposite. It's the post-industrial world. They pick the winners. It's horrible. The book is Visas for Al-Qaeda, CIA handouts that rock the world. J. Michael Springman, An Inside View. I read the book about a year ago. We had him on about it. It's powerful. I remember interviewing him I think I had Springman on before 2001 even ended. I mean, I remember seeing him in Canadian papers just exposing the Saudis and the CIA ordering them to let in, even though they were on terror lists and everything. When was it you first went public? Because I saw your story. Didn't get really any attention here at first. I think I had you on. When did you first go public?
This was back at the end of 2001, I think. Yeah. I had done an article for Covert Action Quarterly, which is now out of existence. And then the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation picked this up and had me interviewed, I guess, in the winter or...
yeah, that's when I saw it, because I remember having you on right around Christmas, one of the last shows of the year, and wow. And boy, I got to say, everything you said turned out to be spot on.
Unfortunately.
I mean, it's all dead on, but we had all those FBI agents. People always call me a conspiracy theorist. I'm quoting FBI translator Sibel Edmonds. I'm quoting the FBI agents that said we were ordered to stand down. They go, oh, shut up. You say the firefighters blew up the buildings. No, I'm not. Our government is working with radical Islam and protecting it. Springman, why and where does this go, and where do you think it ends?
Well, why they're doing this, I think they've gotten the idea that they can destabilize these countries and give the United States an opportunity to kind of fish in troubled waters, to sell them bombs and bullets, to sell them concrete and steel for their damaged buildings and sewage treatment plants. I think they see this as an advantage, and it helps Israel because the Arabs are fighting each other and not Israel. And I don't think it's going to get any better, and will likely get worse unless and until we stop supporting the terrorists. We stop recruiting them, we stop training them, we stop supporting them. And then go to a Marshall Plan kind of affair where we rebuild their economies, we rebuild their destroyed infrastructure, and we teach them and educate them into how to operate computers and engineering plants and things like this.
Sure. Well, Springman, I know you were high-level State Department, but the way you're talking, you might have been doing something a little else, huh? Because I know that, yeah, that was the CIA plan, and part of this has been declassified, of Eisenhower, was to build it into like the Riviera, like, I mean, just like Syria was just a few years ago, hotels, beaches, you know, export Western culture, modernize. The Muslims then wanted it. They didn't like the little desert bands that were trying to, you know, kidnap women for Allah or whatever that Saudi Arabia has become and taking over. And so the whole Iraq project, putting Saddam in power in 1979, that was all leftovers of the Eisenhower plan to actually try to modernize in a Marshall Plan for the Middle East. Too bad that never happened. And again, I'm not into American interventionism, but that really created some good spots in the Middle East. When did it change to just destabilize, turn the jihadis loose? That is so immoral.
Well, I think this came after September 11, 2001. I think that this was when Wesley Clark in September, October of that year had said, high officials at the Defense Department said, we're going to attack 7 countries and destroy them. And it's the same crowd of countries, Syria, Lebanon, not Lebanon, I'm sorry, Syria,
Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
Yeah, right. And then, as Robert Dreyfus said in his book about the devil, we know, he had said that up until then, we saw Islam as a shield against the evil, godless communists. And then afterwards, he said after 2001, the whole thing changed, and Islam could be used as a sword to strike at governments and countries and people and organizations that we didn't like and wanted to change, probably for the worse.
Sure, so it's a jihad proxy army, and they admit that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then. Why let them into Europe? I get having them all kill each other. I'm not saying that's a good thing. Why then open the gates and have the head of the UN program, Peter Sutherland, advertise, come here, make it all cause celeb? I mean, look, they knew it was almost all people that got defeated in Syria, people that invaded, not even so much military, but a lot of them just pilgrims to steal land. They're all pouring in with fake passports, fake visas, that's admitted. More than half of them, according to even Interpol. That's more than just a mess. It looks like a giant false flag.
Well, there's a lot to that. I'm glad you mentioned Sutherland. There was another guy, Gerard Knaus, an Austrian, who was one of George Soros's disciples. And then there was this Diederik Samson, yes, a Dutchman. And they put this together, the 3 of them. And the idea was to, in Sutherland's case, we need to multiculturalize Europe. We need to bring in workers. We need to bring in warm bodies to make up for the failing and dying
Sure,
people.
But they don't vet them. They bring military-age men, not the doctors and scientists that we used to bring.
Exactly. And I think part of this is if we can wreck Europe, we won't have any competition. Europe, if a united, organized Europe would be a powerful political and economic body, and the United States, I don't think, wants to see that.
Sure, then how do you induce Merkel and Hollande and all of them to carry out the plan?
Well, tell them that if you continue to fight Russia, if you continue to bring in these floods of people that are essentially destroying your own countries and your own economies, we're going to put restrictions on you people. We're going to start saying, well, we will have a no-fly, no-sail zone over the British Isles. We want to see Northern Ireland liberated. We want to see Scotland set free and that kind of thing. And we have to make it very clear to them that the United States does not want to see a destroyed Europe, a collapsed Europe, a Europe
That's
filled with people busy fighting each other and fighting the...
Sure. But you're hitting a globalist angle, and I'm not saying you're a globalist. I'm saying on the surface inside the CIA, they're telling people, we're going to wreck Europe, so America's number one. The truth is they're wrecking us. They're wrecking Europe. They want to use China to leverage everybody out and have a huge sucking sound where everybody's poor, but the elites, because the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed. So really, it's just global destabilization. I see Trump coming in trying to block that earlier globalist operation. What do you think?
Well, he can do it. He seems to be backing away from improving relations with Russia, and I don't know why.
Well, let me tell you, they've got neocons in the administration that he brought in to help him run things that are openly running around giving false reports of Russian intrigue to pick off all the good people and sabotage Trump. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're going to bring in Elliot Abrams, the Zionist maniac at the Department of State. And fortunately, he's out now. But he was seen for years by people...
Well, they keep telling Trump, if you just bring us in, we'll be nice. And the minute he brings them in, they're not nice. So I'll tell them, and they all know this. They're freaking out right now. They're going to get their asses thrown out in the next 3 weeks if they don't back off. But they can't help it. They can't help it. And then meanwhile, I'm trying to stop that whole angle, so I get accused of being a Zionist stooge. It's total upside-down land by the pseudo-intellectual left.
Mm.
Well, I appreciate your time. I mean, it's so confusing, I can hardly understand it. Other key tidbits.
Well, it's the thing that is that the United States has got to grasp reality and end this, we love immigrants of any shape or size. People who do come to the United States as permanent residents and then who become citizens are examined by the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But there's been a program for 8 years in the Obama administration called CARP, C-A-R-R-P. It's the Controlled Application Review and Resolution Program, where they work to delay, deny, or discourage Arabs and Muslims from becoming permanent residents and becoming citizens of the United States, no matter where they're from. They pick you out of thin air. They put you into this program. I've had clients that have fought for years to become citizens because they were married to an American. They were living here. Their children are citizens, and yet they couldn't get their paperwork through the government.
Sure, they encourage to have a permanent illegal underclass the Democrats control. And so they make it hard for the really good people we want to get. Sorry, go ahead.
And they get votes. The Democrats want these people in to vote for them. And the big businessmen want them in because it's cheap labor. They won't complain because if you complain, we'll kick you out.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Mr. Springman, thank you for so much time, and we appreciate your work. Great job on the book.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Yeah, wow. Now, that's real sophisticated 30 minutes, 40 minutes of talk, folks. It's not just immigrants are perfect or immigrants are bad. It's, you know, the reality of what's going on. And every time I get a former customs official on or State Department person on, they pretty much agree because they care about the country and they know who the players are and they understand what's happening. And you just heard it. You don't just take anybody, any shape, size, background. But the Democrats want the most dumbed down, unwashed people they can to mold them. And the big corporations want to exploit everybody. The big ones, they want cheap labor. I mean, Google and especially the big company, Apple, is lecturing Trump about how mean he is to these poor immigrants and the few hundred that got caught up at airports or whatever. They run Foxconn labs in China, dozens of factories with suicide nets, forced drugging, forced abortion, 18-hour work days. And the daycare is the kids are chained up on power poles outside and crap in the street. Seriously, you pull up, there's hundreds of kids lined up, crapping on the side of the street, hoping they get one meal a day. I mean, I'm not kidding. And they support censorship. They support all this craziness. And then they lecture us how we're mean. I mean, Apple is a monster evil company. But they're all liberal. They all moral signal and justice signal so that, you know, they're the big official good people. I mean, David Knight adopted his daughter in China. You ought to hear what it was like, what the conditions she was in. I mean, you know, this is hellish. I care about the Chinese people. They spend this, oh, you don't like Asians. You know, I'm not going to sit there and even play that race card. The point is, this is a nightmare scenario taking place, and the worst offenders of human rights that fund radical Islamic takeovers, Apple, Google, they've all been involved supporting it, are just really wicked corporations that act like they're liberal and then do the worst stuff and treat people the very, very worst. And then Donald Trump's treating his employees like gods compared to them. Because he wants employees that can buy the products and go on his golf course. And Trump wants a big, rich, glistening world, a big future for humanity. Everything nice. He likes nice things. The globalists don't. They want you poor and stupid. And people are figuring that out, and that's why they're so scared. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You going to sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you going to be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.